Her monument lies also in her work, in a mass of things that she has written in support of the various ways in which she feels that the world should move.
When the WSPU moved to London, they abolished the democratic constitution and they set up a very, very autocratic organisation. So a lot of good people were expelled and left. I'm not talking about Sylvia at this stage. It's amazing that Sylvia stayed in for another 7 years. What they got was a lot of very, very posh women, titled women, who were wearing silks and satins, purple, white and green sashes. They looked smashing, and they marched along to the suffrage anthem.
But it's an absolute testament to how much the suffrage movement was in the popular consciousness. So thousands upon thousands of these would have been printed and distributed.
Another way of portraying the suffragettes was as these sort of small women, overawed by the large policemen here.
Militancy had forced the issue into public debate, and in 1910 a bill was introduced to give richer women the parliamentary vote. The bill was shelved.
Why was the state so hostile to this demand for women to have the vote and for universal suffrage?
Well, I expect you'll have heard that what's become a proverb: if voting counted for anything, they'd abolish it.
The problem is that capitalism inherits the subordination of women. If you have somebody in a family, and most of us still want to live in families, who becomes responsible for domestic work, you don't have to pay them.
Of course, she was many times imprisoned for her suffragette activity, her support of the movement, and it's ironic that Britain at that time had the so-called Liberal government, a Liberal government which put women in prison and applied forcible feeding to them, thrusting a tube down their throats. Scarcely liberalism as we imagine it.
This is what's known as the Cat and Mouse Act. It was seen as like a cat playing with a mouse, letting it go, only to catch it again and bring it back in. And so the government being the cat and the suffragette the mouse.
Sylvia Pankhurst is most associated with the women's suffrage movement, and that's fine. But what people already forget is that she was associated with the struggles of working class women in the East End of London.
She was expelled because she didn't obey her mother and her sister. She was summoned to Paris to see Christabel.
My mother's involvement in the suffragette movement and that of the family as a whole was such that you had various splits in the suffragette movement, as you have in other progressive movements.
It was here in the Old Ford Road that Sylvia Pankhurst established her breakaway organisation, the East London Federation of Suffragettes.
Pankhursts were very much in favour of the war effort. Not Sylvia, I should say, but her mother and sister, Emily and Christabel, certainly threw themselves into the war effort.
To organise this procession in July 1915, Mrs. Pankhurst had received £2,000 from her old enemy Lloyd George.
A lot of people have said that women won the right to vote eventually as a result of their efforts during the war. What do you think about that argument?
I think it's absolute nonsense. It was a class-based franchise still in 1918.
In October 1920, she was arrested and charged under the Defence of the Realm Act for publishing 2 articles urging the armed forces to mutiny.
Sylvia clearly wanted revolutionary change, but revolution didn't happen. Why didn't it?
3 words: the Labour Party.
The tributes that came to her when she died were really pretty amazing. The only country that paid her no tribute at all was, of course, this one, Britain.